Good morning. Welcome to episode 29 of the Driller Newscast, a weekly update on the news and stories impacting the water well industry and industrial drilling industry. Episode 29 is brought to you by Wyoben Incorporated. Wyoben Inc., a privately held, family-owned business, has been providing high-quality drilling fluid products since 1951. Wyoben's knowledgeable customer service, sales, and research people bring industry-leading products and support to the marketplace. The innovative products are the result of field-driven solutions and dedication to the customer's goals. I'm your host, Brock Yordy. Our safety, news, and main story are all coupled into one this week on the Driller Newscast as we talk about the impact of extreme weather and the importance of a reliable power grid. Ground source geothermal can help us strengthen our power grid by taking some of the load off. For safety, for news, for the main story, it comes down to this. Climate change and extreme weather is here, and we have to stop and think about how we can curb this impact. And it all comes down to this. We must become more resilient and responsive to extreme weather conditions. In the past 29 episodes, we have talked about lightning strikes, heat-related illnesses, the droughts, the water of the United States and how flooding events and how to control that water, the fights on canals and moving water across the country. This is all from extreme weather. And on September 10th, we saw with California with the blackouts, the California Independent System Operators on September 10th stated that energy demand is expected to soar as temperatures are forecast to remain high through the week. That previous Tuesday night, the demand hit 52,061 megawatts, which broke the previous record set in 2006. California state officials recommended doing the following to conserve energy between the afternoon and late evening: setting air conditioning thermostats at 78 degrees, turning off unnecessary lights, closing blinds and drapes, deferring using major appliances, including stop charging electric cars, unplug unused electrical devices, limiting opening the refrigerator doors. They cut their transportation system energy use by 50%, slowed all the trains down so that they could prevent a major grid failure from the extreme temperatures. California is our largest populated state. And then we can see from the impacts of last year's Texas winter storm, the official death toll from February's snow and ice storm is 246 lives and $25 billion. Which is currently one of the worst natural disasters in state history. Texas is our second largest populated state. Here's the deal. No different than water. Consumers view electricity like water. They take it for granted until it's not there. Both electric grid impacts were caused by extreme weather that does not fit our traditional models. Keep hearing 500-year rain events, 1,000-year rain events. How can this be possible? Look at the globe, from Pakistan to China to Korea, the floods there and in Europe. We as a country and a globe have to look at this. Then we think about the flooding events that impacted power outages and water in Kentucky and Mississippi and the previous 6 weeks. You know, Kentucky is 4.52 million people and ranks 25th. And Mississippi is 2.93 million people and ranks 34th. So when you combine Texas and California, who are our two most populated states in the country, it's over 66 million residents, which is 20% of the U.S. population. This jumps into our this week's main story, which is an interview with Donovan Gordon, Director of Clean Heating and Cooling for NYSERDA. New York State Energy Research and Development Authority. New York is the fourth most populous state with over 19 million residents. Donovan discusses the importance of clean energy along with the importance of reducing our collective demand on the power grid by installing ground source geothermal. How does this impact us? I know we talk about we're reducing oil leases and we are stopping pipelines, and this is slowing down our economy and our industry, but we are a water industry. We are an industrial industry. And the need for oil and fossil fuels will always be there. But for us, let's start with what matters most: water. Hydroelectric dams need water, and that's how they function for electricity. Power plants need cooling water when there are high temperatures, and nuclear power plants use large volumes of water for cooling. Water and energy are connected. Energy insecurity impacts everyone. However, low-income housing takes the most significant hit. Low-income homeowners and renters spend the greatest portion of their income on energy bills. They also tend to live in the most structurally deficient homes. These homes lack weatherization and energy efficiency upgrades. These families face the heat or eat debate where they must choose what is most important: a warm or cool home or nutrition. And we've seen this with the fatalities from heat exhaustion in homes and hypothermia. This is the importance of the thermal energy networks and what's happening with the federal infrastructure bill and the Inflation Reduction Act. Studies have shown that low-income neighborhoods, especially those of minority populations, are more likely to suffer from being able to afford or even accessing energy due to an aging infrastructure. The federal infrastructure bill and the Inflation Reduction Act have these goals: over $3 billion in block grants for environmental and climate justice. That's to look at what's happening right now. This is important to us as an industry. $1 billion in grants and loans for energy efficiency, water efficiency, and climate resilient efforts in affordable housing. This is all business that's going to take drilling. Roughly $2.6 billion for the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, NOAA, to support community resilient efforts to prepare communities and homeowners for the worsening impacts of extreme weather. The data's there, the science is there. Ground source geothermal and thermal networks, along with wind and solar, all aid in these goals. This is my interview with Donovan Gordon with NYSERDA. I hope you enjoy. For this week's feature, we have Donovan Gordon, Director of Clean Heating and Cooling for NYSERDA, the New York State Energy Research and Development Authority. The state of New York, we keep saying, is paving the way. They're blazing a trail past the rest of the country right now with amazing clean energy goals of 70% of electricity will come from renewable energy by 2030. 100% carbon-free electricity by 2040, and an 85% reduction in greenhouse gas emissions from the 1990 levels by 2050. This is all what we need, not only in New York, but our entire country and the globe. And we have Donovan Gordon here, and he's going to talk to us about NYSERDA and ground source geothermal. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Brock. It's certainly a pleasure to be here.
So, what or who is NYSERDA?
NYSERDA, again, is the New York State Energy Research and Development Authority. We're New York State's clean energy and innovation agency. We put billions of dollars in the marketplace annually to advance clean energy solutions and innovations and new products. I do want to build on what you mentioned earlier, and how some of these goals, nation-leading, very aggressive goals, sort of tie in. You know, from the 100% electricity renewable energy. But I want to hone in on the last point, the 85% reduction of carbon emissions from our 1990 levels. I want to break something out for you in that in terms of the carbon emissions output in New York State, a third of the carbon emissions comes from buildings. Another 40 plus comes from transportation. So buildings is a big contributor to the carbon emissions in New York State, and it specifically ties back to the heating and cooling systems. So we need to decarbonize the heating and cooling systems, and heat pumps, and I'm going to emphasize and particularly talk about geothermal heat pumps, play a significant role in achieving that goal.
And that jumps right into our next question. How is NYSERDA promoting geothermal heat pumps and drilling in the state of New York?
So we have several areas that we do. And first, we have through the utilities in New York State, really robust incentive program called New York State Clean Heat. And oh boy, now with the new funding for Con Edison, it's over $1 billion over the next few years for heat pump incentives. And yes, it covers air source and ground source heat pumps. We also have consumer through marketing, consumer awareness and outreach and education. So we do have marketing campaigns, whether it's social media or we do some cable TV at some point, advertising the benefits of heat pumps. And we also have on our website we call a heat pump planner, where residents of New York, or anybody for that matter that goes on our website, can take a look at the different options, heat pump options. Yes, it covers air source, but also ground source heat pumps, the benefits and how it can serve their particular home or building best.
That's interesting because throughout the country, we still doubt geothermal a little bit. As long and proven this technology is, it's great to have that customer education out there because we still think it's not reliable.
Yeah, and yeah, so we really need that education piece. But I want to go back and address the rigs or the drilling. We need more contractors that are able to do this. We have a lot of HVAC contractors that they'll go and do air sources a lot easier, but not that many geothermal contractors. Only a handful of them, and even fewer drillers. Not that we have few drillers, but few drillers that actually do geothermal boreholes. And I do want to qualify that even further. As you know, you're a driller. The drilling rig just puts the hole in the ground, but that's not geothermal. You've got to insert the loop. You've got to put the fluid in there. You've got to flush it. You've got to grout it properly, manifold it. It's more than just putting a hole in the ground. It's putting a thermal battery in the ground. That's the terminology I'm using now. That will provide thermal energy, potential up to a century. Right? We know the pipes, the manufacturer's warranty is 50 years. The useful life could be up to 100 years. So this really is a long-term infrastructure asset that you're putting in. And I'm really trying to talk more about that. But also on the drilling side, we need more drillers and drilling rigs that are designed more specifically for geothermal loop field installations, as opposed to sort of a catch-all. Some of the drillers say, well, I just want to get this big $1.5 million rig, so I can do a water well. You never know what you're going to go on. But there are companies that are going out and getting rigs in the $650,000 range that are really designed smaller, more nimble, and can do a great job to insert geothermal boreholes. So we just need to really take a hard look at what equipment do we need, and what does it cost to specifically advance and scale up the geothermal industry.
And that leads back to the question: drilling companies and rig manufacturers can help with your goals by ramping up, coming up with a rig dedicated for geothermal.
Absolutely. So in New York State, we have a little over 8 million buildings. Except we want to decarbonize, if not all of them, by mid-century. That's a daunting task. We're also, I just recently launched a program, it's about a year or so ago, called Community Heat Pump Program. So we're now looking at what in the industry they call it district systems. In terms, we call it thermal energy networks. So we're now looking at large installations. And I know with drillers, it's the mobilization, taking a rig from one home and doing one job 5-10 miles over to do another job. It's just not cost effective. But if you can put your drill rig like Ball State and sit it there for months and just keep drilling, it's very effective. So we're now looking to do really larger jobs, district level jobs. So again, I'm talking to companies out of the state, out of the country, Canada. They're all looking at New York because of the policy environment, and also the demand that we see developing over the next few years for geothermal, where these drillers and rig manufacturers see that, okay, there's going to be demand. Obviously, from a just pure business standpoint, if there's no demand, why invest or build out your operations to get into this? But the demand will increase. I promise you that.
And that demand has started with our next question here about the, Utility Energy Thermal Network and Job Act legislation. That's a big deal. That if I'm in Pennsylvania or Ohio or Massachusetts, or if I'm within striking distance, I'm getting in a rig and driving to New York right now.
Yes, that is a huge bill that was passed because now that the bill changes the definition of utility, both an electric and a gas utility. So either one can now build, own a thermal energy network. So they're in the early stages because they have to come up with the rulemaking, and the utilities have to come up with pilot projects. The bill was signed July 5th, so the ink is still drying, but it just paves the way for the future that we do have a robust private sector that's looking at this. We have upon program opportunity notice where we're providing funding for feasibility studies and detailed design and construction support. And so far we have over 40 projects that's been proposed to us that we're supporting at some level, most of them with feasibility studies, for these district systems. So that, and then you add what the utilities are going to be bringing to the table. Thermal energy networks, it's still several terms now. We have utility thermal energy networks, we have community thermal energy networks, municipalities. Some municipalities are looking to develop and own these systems, municipal thermal energy networks. But clearly, the path in the future looks to be developing these networked thermal energy networks going forward, which is good news for drillers because, again, they're doing much larger jobs and not have to move their rigs too many times for small jobs.
And the Jobs Act aspect of this, we have a tough time in the drilling industry. We talk about it often, no different than the construction industry. It's 166 million Americans that work in the United States. There's 7.6 million that work in construction. So, to get more of this great Gen Z that's coming out, the youngest of the millennials, getting them involved in this industry, inspired, and knowing that there's an influence on green energy and jobs.
You're the first person that's framed it that way. I love it because I always say that Gen Z, they're the ones that's going to take us to the finish line. They're the ones that's going to take us to that 2050 goal. So you're absolutely right on that. And as they get older, they're the ones that are going to feel the biggest brunt of climate change. We're kind of feeling it now, but boy, 2030, 2040, they're going to really feel it. So getting them to participate and understand now is really important. But the Jobs Act part of it, in the short term, really is about prevailing wage and having union participation in this, because most of the utility work, particularly on gas pipes, are done with union work, right? So they see this as a way to help the state with their clean energy agenda while transitioning their current workers who are laying gas pipes to laying pipes for thermal energy networks, which is the same high density polyethylene. So they work with the material, they know how to deal with pipes. That's what they do. So they see it as a really natural transition where they could train and keep more people employed and hire more people while we achieve our clean energy agenda, particularly as it relates to decarbonizing our buildings.
It's wonderful. So, how does a contractor become a participating
Uh,
member or contractor of NYSERDA?
okay, so that one I don't have in my head, so I do have a little sheet. So it's part of our New York State Clean Heat programs that have to go on their website to see how to become a participating contractor. So here's the eligibility for a driller. There are four different certifications. So ground source heat pump driller, one of the following plus New York City, so it's really two. Registration and certification for open loop geothermal well drilling by the New York State Department of Environmental Conservation. They regulate the state's drilling. Or the National Groundwater Association certified vertical closed loop driller certificate, which I think most drillers will have that. So either one of those, but if you're drilling in New York City, you will have to have an additional certification, certificate of insurance as per the New York City Department of Environmental Protection rules concerning drilling and excavation. That's for New York City only, and acknowledgement of New York City Department of Environmental Protection rules concerning drilling and excavation. So that's specific to New York City, but the other two is, again, I think every driller in your network is certified by the National Groundwater Association. So that's fairly easy. And that's it. That's really all they need.
And there's just so, I can't emphasize enough, there's so much work going on, from the thermal networks that are happening in New York City to the 2 million homes that are residential that are in, rural areas that we need to be able to drill. I think any company could right now put together a drilling program if they're competent in geothermal and head east and be busy for a very long time.
Well, yeah, I've said this to drillers, obviously heat pump manufacturers with the appliance, that we've gone on record. That is a state of the state goal. We're actively working on it to have 2 million homes heat pump ready. Now, of that is climate friendly ready. Of that, 1 million to have installed heat pumps by 2030, and another million heat pump ready. So basically weatherization. So between now and 2030, minimum, we'd like to see 1 million heat pumps installed. Now, we haven't broken it out, air source versus ground source, but that's going to be up to the industry, right? We want the geothermal. Again, I'll talk geothermal. We know is the most efficient from a COP standpoint. From a long-term life cycle cost, it is the cheapest. The heat pumps, 25 years, but the loop field, the actual infrastructure, the thermal energy is there for up to a century, potentially. Uses less electricity, less refrigerants. So there's checks a lot of boxes that are all positive. So, and again, that's just the residential side. Right? In our pond, a lot of them are commercial buildings or campuses. So we're looking, and I see where the opportunities for geothermal will be in a multifamily sector. So across all of the building typologies, geothermal is a really wonderful solution to have.
And we don't worry about polar vortex when we're thinking about that constant ground temperature of 52 degrees, 48 degrees.
That's correct. Or a hurricane, because everything's buried, so it's protected to a great degree. Everything's on the ground.
Final question. What is next for NYSERDA and helping New York achieve net zero goals? What are you guys excited about?
Well, we're excited about putting the plans together to achieve the aggressive goals that we have, and that's what we're doing. Um, you know, coordinating with utilities and other agencies so we can really leverage all of what we're doing. So let's say with utilities, incentives, NYSERDA's expertise and support that we give from a technical assistance standpoint, working with other agencies like the Department of Environmental Conservation and New York City, the Department of Environmental Protection, and other agencies that will help the Department of Transportation. If we're going to be burying pipes, we want to open up roads to the trenches, right? So we're going to be interacting with a lot of different agencies. Now, and, I've talked to several private equity firms in the last week or two since the IRA, which again presents tremendous opportunities for the space as they now look to invest in geothermal when they weren't looking to invest in this space before. So in the coming months, I'm quite excited now as to where we are, but more excited about where this will go because the stars are starting to align. And once we get real investment, in order to get rigs, you need money to buy the rigs, right? So, so getting investors to invest in companies so they can get rigs, but getting the companies to get the type of rigs that's needed for geothermal, not just, if you can get by with a $600,000, $700,000 rig to do the work, as opposed to $1.5 million rig, well, there you go. You're not going to get two and do more work. We see that there's going to be a lot of work, but if the worst thing of not having demand is having demand and not being able to fulfill that demand. So if we don't have drillers and drilling rigs, willing to come to New York and capable of installing these thermal batteries, then these goals, it's going to be hard to be met. So my, I guess I listened to one of your podcasts. My Brock question is, drilling industry, what can we do to attract you? What will make you come to New York? Because we want you here, we need you here, and we see that this is a great opportunity for you to make money, but also to create jobs for New York State residents. And I do want to emphasize that what would even be better, not even we want, is that there's a focus on disadvantaged communities and training and offering jobs to residents in those communities, and partnering and subcontracting with women and minority-owned businesses in New York State. We want everybody that's willing and capable to be able to participate in this clean energy transition economy that we're transitioning to, because that's ultimately what it is. We're transitioning from a fossil fuel-based economy to a clean energy economy, and we want as many New York State's residents, regardless of their zip code, to be able to participate in that transition.
The beauty of what New York's doing for geothermal drilling specifically, we as a drilling industry right now, from infrastructure, water well, cathodic, geotechnical, large construction, we don't have enough drillers. In order to train drillers, we need reliable work that has repetition to build confidence. So for us, if I'm starting a drilling company, or I want to develop a young driller into a great driller, getting them on a thermal network job or a job where you're doing repetition, 3 or 4 holes in one area, versus most of the places in the country, we show up, we drill one water well, we drill one cathodic well, we pull off and we go to a totally different location. So the beauty of this entire situation, especially with the Jobs Act part and everything that's happening, is when this works, it's going to expand and we're going to see other large cities doing it. But if I'm a water well drilling or an industrial drilling company right now and I need to develop more drillers, I go, how do I get them on a commercial geothermal project, or a geothermal project where I know they can get 4 or 5 holes in one location, build that experience and confidence? Now I've just developed somebody that's saving the environment and can drill on the global water crisis at the same time.
Understand, we want to take part in helping that happen. And yes, you're absolutely right. Totally understand that. And that's why I believe these thermal energy networks will appeal to drilling companies.
Thank you for joining us today. This is awesome. We really appreciate it.
It was my pleasure. Thank you, Brock.
Thanks. I want to thank you for joining us for episode 29 of the Driller Newscast. I want to thank Wildben for helping us bring such a major piece of the drilling industry news together this week with climate change. Wildben's knowledgeable customer service, sales, and research people bring industry-leading products and support to the marketplace, including geothermal grouts, solidification material. They are very much in the middle of the environment. The innovative products are the result of field-driven solutions and dedication to the customer's goal. This week, September 19th, starts the 14th year of Climate Week New York City, which is the biggest global climate event of its kind, bringing together the most influential leaders in climate action from business, government, and the climate community, in conjunction with the United Nations General Assembly and the City of New York. Climate Week New York City creates an ambitious platform for our mission to drive climate action fast. The NYSERDA team is very busy with this event going on, and we should all be paying attention to the news that's coming from this and the leading technologies and the next set of policies coming out. Again, a huge thanks to Donovan Gordon and the NYSERDA team for educating us on how we can help New York and the country fight climate change and reduce greenhouse gas emissions by utilizing geothermal and green energies. Check out thedriller.com for the latest industry news and innovations. Thank you for joining me.